Now, Executive Suite with WPRI.com reporter Ted Nesi.
Nearly 12 years ago, a startup called FarSounder won the Rhode Island Business Plan competition, impressing the judges with its forward-looking sonar that helps boats detect objects and avoid collisions. FarSounder is now exporting its technology to cruise ships, yachts, and research vessels all over the world, and recently opened a new headquarters in Warwick that features an acoustic tank for testing. This week on the first half of Executive Suite, FarSounder CEO Cheryl Zimmerman. Plus, when the jogging supply store Rhode decided to move to North Main Street in Providence, one of the new location's big draws was the ample parking available out front. Then, without a warning, no parking signs went up, and the spaces were gone. Roadrunner's owners say they've been frustrated by a near total lack of communication. We'll hear their story today on the second half of Executive Suite. Welcome to Executive Suite. I'm Ted Nesi. Cheryl, thank you for joining me.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
So I've been looking at your videos on your website about how sonar works and everything, and we just heard about that boat getting stuck in the Antarctic, so people understand that you can collide when you're sailing around. I want to just start with your explanation. What do you do at FarSounder?
Well, we're world leaders in the development of 3D forward-looking sonar technology. Basically, what radar does above the waterline, we can see obstacles below the waterline. So it's always been a challenge where the 21st century new tool for navigating in shallow waters or wherever there may be obstacles that you could run into, whether rocks or whales moving or any transient obstacles.
And people might be surprised because they would assume that the boats always needed this kind of technology and that sonar has existed, but it sounds like you found that they weren't getting as much information about what's in front of them as they needed.
Right. In fact, the first patents were developed right after the Titanic, right a long time ago, but technology was not really there to have a full view underneath the waterline to see obstacles. And we were even surprised when we were first working on it. It was after the Exxon Valdez accident, and also more locally the QE2 when it had an accident in Rhode Island Sound. And so we were also looking to help avoid whale strike or hitting the right whales, the northern right whales that come through this area. So when we started looking, there was nothing that could solve the navigation issues and obstacle avoidance. So.
Now, tell me about how the products themselves work. Does it get built into the boat? Is it like I think of like the GPS you stick on your dashboard? Do you put something on the front of the boat? What are the actual products like?
Yeah, Ted, that's a good question. Normally, the installation is through the hull facing forward. Many people are used to and understand an echo sounder, which is on most recreational boats also, and they're looking down, so they're looking at the rocks underneath. So you can get a trend and sort of understand the way the area is going, but you might not see something that's up out of the sea floor. So we look forward so we can see up to the sea surface and down to the sea floor. Down 150 meters we go, and a wide field of view. So we're showing
almost the difference between like a laser beam and having a range of vision.
Exactly, a laser beam you'd have to move back and forth just to try to see a picture of it, whereas we see on one ping of the acoustic sound, we can see everything.
And you've kind of alluded to it, but in more detail, who are your customers? Who do you sell to? Who buys these products?
Yes. Okay. Our customer base is global. The main customer base is in Europe, though we do have customers in the U.S. The shipbuilding seems to be very advanced in Europe, so our main customers may be building their boats or having a refit in Germany, Italy, the Netherlands. And our first customers were more on the larger super yachts, and they're still our bread and butter. We still have many, many more super yachts to sell to.
These would be pleasure yachts, maybe a billionaire who made some money and wants a nice boat?
Absolutely. There's some of the largest vessels privately owned in the world, and we're on many of those top ones.
Do you ever get to go on them yourself?
Yes, I've been on them, yes.
Are they nice?
On tours. They're definitely beautiful, yes. I was actually out with one of them in the U.S. for 19 hours. Down in the Gulf of Mexico on some sea trials, and it was very interesting to join them. Of course, my field service engineers and technicians spend more time even out on the ships, and they've seen everywhere on the ships. And yes, they are quite interesting. But we also are doing many more now, down to about 60 feet in length. Especially a lot of expedition type yachts that might be going up to Alaska or even further north to see the icebergs up there and the glaciers.
Now, you talked about going to having customers in Europe. Exports, there's a lot of talk about the need for Rhode Island to export more on manufacturers and industrial companies because we are a small market in Rhode Island itself. And there's, of course, the Chafee Center now at Bryant that works on, the John Chafee Center that works on exports. How did you get into, how do you find customers in Europe when you're a small company in Rhode Island?
I'd say at the beginning it was out of necessity because our customers who were building ships there were looking for the most advanced technologies available, and we certainly have that. We still do have that. We're leaders in 3D sonar technology. And without the internet, it would have been harder. I think we can communicate very easily with our customers all over the world. And we started going to trade shows and visiting our customers in the countries that I had mentioned. So that's one area, and it's gotten to the point that we do 85% of our sales in the past year or 2 years to outside of the U.S. And I think we've added a layer of help to the state of Rhode Island by exporting, because as you mentioned, there aren't enough super yachts or other large vessels being built here, and that we can export our systems really helps the economy and the balance of trade.
Yeah, bringing in money from outside for jobs and everything else here. Yes. I know you're also doing some work on fisheries in the EU. Explain that. How does FarSounder come in there?
We are working with a group of companies and government agencies in the Netherlands who are working on different ways to understand the different types of mackerel and a few other fish also within the schools of fish. There, obviously, the fishermen are looking for the most expensive fish that their customers want. And but when you have a large school of fish, you might have all different types. But our customers have developed algorithms, mathematical algorithms that can distinguish between 2 different types of mackerel even, and between herring and other types of fish. And they use our sonar and the data that we have to then apply their work, and it can distinguish the different ones. And that way the fishermen will go and catch the more expensive fish. They can fill their holds much more quickly, and they can bring it back to market fresher. And another area that's very important is that it lowers the bycatch, or the fish that end up getting thrown out or dead that they don't want. And so it helps environmentally with the sustainability of the ocean.
And it sounds like it makes it more efficient too.
Much more efficient all around.
All right, we have to take a break. When we come back, we're going to talk about how FarSounder was created back in about a little over a decade ago. Stick with us on Executive Suite. Welcome back to Executive Suite. I'm Ted Nisi, and later in the show we're going to hear from the owners of Roadrunner, the jogging goods store in Providence, about their situation over there on North Main Street. But right now I'm so pleased to be joined by Cheryl Zimmerman. She is the CEO of FarSounder, which develops 3D forward-looking sonar. Did I say it right there? Did I say it there? A mouthful, but a fascinating thing. And I want to hear the story, if we could, Cheryl, about how FarSounder came about. Where did the idea come from, and how did the company develop?
Yes. It started, well, before the company was incorporated in 2001, but before then there were many years of development, first at the University of Rhode Island, and then later at a company that was spun off from the University of Rhode Island. And my son, another engineer, mechanical engineer and ocean engineer, was looking for something to work on as an undergraduate, I think by his sophomore year. And he was working with Dr. Jim Miller of the Ocean Engineering Department. And they were working on different types of sonar projects. And they were also looking to come up with a commercial type of product. So Matthew started working on the forward-looking sonar, and as I mentioned earlier, for detecting whales and to prevent crashes and collisions. So they started working, and then Matt, as an undergraduate, actually went over to Europe for a year, because the URI has the International Engineering Program, which is amazing and a topic of another day. And when he came back, he continued doing this. And when he was graduating, he always said, well, it was easier to start a company than to go look for a job. So at that point, a little after that, they worked at a small little think tank, PeerCon. And then when we started hearing the potential of this technology, I got involved from the business end. Even though I'm an engineer, I have run other companies, both technical and non-technical. And so we decided to spin that off, got the name FarSounder instead of Depth Sounder or Echo Sounder, we're looking far. And started the company in April 2001. And from there was still many years to get prototypes out. And by 2005, we started shipping our first systems, our first navigation systems. And that was very exciting. We immediately won awards. And actually in 2001, we won the business plan competition also. So we had some good startup. And we developed the company mainly with angel type of investment, friends and family, angel, and really always bootstrapped it a lot. So that was interesting. It might have slowed the growth.
Challenging, I assume.
Very challenging, but at the same time, it got our basics down. We had to be successful. We had to design.
You didn't get $75 million from the state.
No, but we can imagine what we could do with even a tenth of that.
I'll bet.
Yeah, definitely. And then at one point we worked with Department of Homeland Security on some diver detection projects. We've worked with the Navy, and amazingly, we've actually worked with the Department of Commerce. They early on recognized how this can help the balance of trade between the world if there's a good navigation system developed in the U.S. and on U.S. Fleets. Of course, a lot of our products are all around the world, not necessarily in the U.S., but we worked under NIST for their advanced technology program, which no longer exists. Oh. And we actually got $2 million there to develop our sonars to a longer range.
Oh, cool.
So now we go out over a half a nautical mile or 1,000 meters.
And the apple, you kind of alluded to there, doesn't fall far from the tree with your son, because you're an engineer yourself.
Yes.
And we are constantly hearing about the need to bring more people, and particularly women, into STEM, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. What led you on this path, and what advice would you give to bring young women into the same field where you've had such success?
My path actually started originally before I knew what an engineer was. In graduating from high school in Rhode Island, they never even discussed with the women the potential of going into engineering. Yet I was the top in my physics class, so it did not quite make sense. I was sort of told to become a math teacher. But I took a summer program at University of Rhode Island under the National Science Foundation and learned about computer science at the time, very early on. So I started out in that when I first was 18 and went off to the university. And right away, I actually met who is now my husband, and I realized, well, what are you doing? You're an engineer. And I said, wait, I should be in that department, and switch to it. But so over the years, I think it's very important that at an early age that people understand the options that are out there. This was not an option that I had ever known about. And so I think hopefully things are changing, but much more slowly than I would have hoped.
And we're coming up on a break, but I have to ask you before we go, I know one of the things you're hoping to see in the future is to work on Rhode Island fisheries with your technology. Tell me about that.
Yeah, absolutely. Just as we have done in Europe working with the herring, there are many fish, well, there are the bottom feeders, but there's also in the water column type of pelagic fish. And the fishermen do their trawling, and they also have a lot of bycatch. And with the quotas being challenging now, no matter what end of the political spectrum you're in, getting the fish and with less bycatch and getting them to market faster is very important for our Rhode Island and our U.S. fishing fleets. And we would love to work with local companies and the government and NOAA to try to do that.
All right, we'll check back in to see if you can make that happen. I want to thank Cheryl Zimmerman for joining me from FarSounder. When we come back, Roadrunner versus RIPTA, and it's not a race on who can get somewhere with speed. Stick with us on Executive Suite. Welcome back to Executive Suite. I'm Ted Nisi, and now I'm pleased to be joined by Bob Bischcoff, owner of Roadrunner in Providence, and Jim Morris, Roadrunner's business development manager. And full disclosure, this company is close to my heart because I got my own running shoes there recently, but that's not why we're doing the story. It has news value as well today. So You actually, one of your employees reached out to me, who I met when I was getting shoes that time, because of some frustration at Roadrunner about changes to traffic in RIPTA, and it was sort of an interesting story. Jim, why don't you lead us in? What's the story?
Absolutely,
what happened?
Absolutely. It's kind of the small business dilemma that we're faced with. We have a new facility there that we've been there just a little under 2 years, and came in one morning about 5 or 6 months ago, and the entire parking that we had in front of the store had been completely removed. They had 2 no parking signs, tow zone signs up, and they had put a bus lane in right in front of the store. So they had taken out anywhere from 7 to 8 parking spots from in front of our store. And one of the attractions for being there on North Main Street was to have the on-street parking that would be available, in addition to the 4 spaces that we have inside our lot.
And this was the first you had heard this. You didn't get a letter or anything. It just one day you looked out and they were gone.
We came in one morning and there they were, right in front of the store. So at that point, obviously we're trying to find out what happened, what the story was. Nobody had contacted us from the state, from RIPTA, or of any of the above. So I started contacting some of the other business owners in the area to find out what this was all about. I ended up talking eventually with the owner of the sandwich hut down the street, who evidently was the point man for some of the business bus lane changes that were being made. And in talking with him, I found out that this had been going on for a while, but we had never been contacted as new owners for the changes that were being made. So the dilemma is we have anywhere from 4 to 8 people working for us on a daily basis at Roadrunner every single day. There's parking spaces right there that are needed. We also have anywhere from 100 to 1,000 customers in a day, because we do a lot of the packet pickups for like CVS Downtown 5K, other events like that in our store. So the need for spaces is very, very severe there. We have to have the spaces there. And to have them completely removed is very detrimental to our business.
And Bob, tell me about, I know you guys tried to speak to officials and get some information. What was that experience like in recent months?
It was difficult. Part of the reason is that the intersection where we are is State Road, and then the south side of that is the city. So just finding out who to talk to. Was it a city issue or was it a state issue? And just getting through that part was difficult. No one had an answer. Everybody kept pointing a finger. So it took a while. We finally found someone from RIPTA to be a point man. He was very good at telling us what to do and who to talk to, but we had to keep forcing those emails out because no one seemed to be no one wanted to make a decision, and they kept passing the buck.
Yeah, it took a series of emails to eventually have a sit down with one of the gentlemen from RIPTA, and he did come to our store. Greg Nordine did come to our store. We did have a meeting with Greg and explained our difficulty and explained the situation. That took place one day, and we left, sent a follow-up email to Greg, and CC'd a variety of people in RIPTA who were given to me, and nothing came about.
And I spoke to RIPTA this morning because when they hear it's going to be on TV, it's not always hard to get a response once you do that. And they said, look, we've had this plan in place for rapid bus on that street for a long time. We did a lot of outreach, and these gentlemen might have just slipped through the cracks in when they bought their property. So I have to ask you, is it partly just a question of when you came in, the public discussion had been over and you just weren't informed before you bought this location?
That could partially be true, yes. We did come in after this, some of this groundwork had been laid, yes. And but the problem as we see it is, A, we were never contacted at all, and we've been there a year and a half before this took place. So in a year and a half, we heard nothing from anyone regarding this. Secondly, when you're doing something like this and you need that particular space, we suggested some alternatives to move the bus stop down just a little bit from where we were so we would still have parking available. Now, you have to understand, there are 4 businesses currently operating on that block. We are one. There are three other businesses there on that block, one soon to be a new business. So there'll be 5 businesses on that block. If you take all of those parking spaces away, even if you do leave 2, where are the people going to park? There's no available parking in that area. So.
And Bob, has RIPTA taken any steps to try to mitigate this now that you have finally gotten a discussion with them? Are they adding any of the spaces back?
They said they would look at adjusting The map that we originally got added 1 or 2 spots, Jim?
It was 2 spots, yes.
But they never approved that, so we don't know what the end result will be. We made suggestions, like Jim had mentioned, to adjust, and those have not been applied.
It seems like obviously you have your basic gripe, concern about losing the parking spaces, but beyond that, there's a bigger issue here with communication, finding the person to talk to, getting the. It just sounds like that's been a very you'd be frustrated to lose the spaces even if they told you every day they were going to take them, but it's almost worse to have not be able to even talk to someone.
That's the crux of the situation. Is there is really nobody that you reach out and talk to initially. You have to search to find someone. And as a business in Rhode Island, and we've been in Rhode Island for a lot of years, 12, 13 years, you would think that there would be a better communication with the businesses in Rhode Island. We're not one of the top states in the country for businesses.
That is for sure.
That is for sure. And looking up some of the statistics, we're near the bottom. That could be improved a dramatic way so that some of this that takes place doesn't happen.
Now, I have to ask, if, let's say, there had been great communication and they were still taking your parking spaces, do you think you'd feel much differently today?
Well, it's the owner.
I mean, the communication is a big part of it. Working in the dark doesn't help, and not knowing how to correct it or work around it or make plans to adjust. We can't do that right now because we don't know what their plan is.
And what's going to end up happening.
Right.
Bob, we're going to run out of time, but I want to ask, before we do that, tell us a little about, other than this, we're coming out on a negative thing, but Roadrunner seems like it's been a pretty successful business in its old location and its new one. How did it get started and how's it going?
It's been great. We opened 13 years ago. I've been in the industry from a development side. I built footwear for the brands and continue to do that. And Roadrunner, we grew out of a need for the region. There was no running stores in this region. And being in the industry, I realized that. So coming back home in this region, said let's make it happen. So my wife and I set it up and been able to service community, the schools, the medical community. So one
of the areas that my primary focus has been is dealing with some of the businesses in the area as well as the schools. So we now deal with the Lifespans, the Care New Englands, the Hasbros, all of the major businesses in Rhode Island, as well as all the high schools, colleges, et cetera. So we're trying to interact with the community. We're trying to build the business up by doing that. We've been very successful doing that.
And maybe they'll have to take the bus to get there, it sounds like, going forward, but we'll see what happens. Well, I wanted to give you guys a chance to tell your story, and I'll have to be back soon to get new running shoes, even if I take the RIPTA to get down there, since I can't park anymore. Or I'll take a TV live truck maybe, and we park anywhere, as people know. But thank you both, Bob and Jim, for being here. And Cheryl Zimmerman, thank you for joining us on the first half from FarSounder. Be sure to tune in next week when our guest will be the CEO of the Providence Performing Arts Center, PPAC, to talk about the business behind the footlights. If you missed any of this show, you can catch every episode of Executive Suite on WPRI.com. We'll see you back here next week.